Hey,
Hi.
hey, how are you doing?
Good. How are you? Joshua, right?
Yes.
Cool.
Yeah,
Karen says hi.
Karen. Hey, all right, nice. That's so good to know. Good to know she's doing well. How do I pronounce your name?
Joelle.
Joelle. Gotcha. All right, great.
Yes.
Welcome to the people just joining us. We're about to get started with another summer chat. Have you seen any of our other summer chats before
I
this one?
actually have not. I looked through some of them like very briefly, but I've been just very busy with this. But I figured you'd ask me some questions and I would talk about them.
Yeah, like, so you're
Um,
ready for your interrogation?
sure, sure. Yeah. These
Awesome,
look very
perfect.
look like very softball questions.
Got
Stop.
you.
I was at Walk Bike Places last week or 2 weeks ago, and they were
Mhm.
like asking me 10 questions, and I'm like, sure, let me answer those.
Yeah, I'm sure you have them, because obviously this is not your first speaking experience. I know that personally, but for the viewers, like, just can you tell us, like, how do you get involved in cycling?
Yeah, for sure. Um, I first started riding when I was about 11. My dad was a very big cyclist. He was diabetic and sort of wanted to bike for like exercise and to help mediate being diabetic. And he sort of started it. And then as a kid, I did my first like major ride, which was the 5 Borough Bike Tour on the back of my dad's tandem bike. And then sort of from there, translated those skills to riding my own bike. And really just took off with it. And then in high school, I started a bike program to teach people with disabilities how to ride bikes. Hung out at the local bike co-op or Cycle a Bicycle. Shout out to
Yeah.
Karen, not here, but just shout out because she's great. And just really got into it. And yeah,
Wait, so did you participate in anything else besides Recycle a Bicycle? Like, maybe, 'cause I know they were like under Bike New York for a little while. So did you?
yeah. I worked originally did an education program with Bike New York, and then sort of met Karen at a up end of year party, and then she's like, "Hey, like you should learn to fix bikes because you're like teaching riding, so you should learn how to fix bikes." And I was like, "Yeah, like she has a point." Um, so I went, hung out there, which was really you know, it was really it was an amazing experience, just like that. And then I was summer between high school and college, full time teaching at Bike New York, and hanging out, recycle a bicycle after Thursday night, and just having fun and like fixing and hanging out with like cool bike people, and yeah.
Perfect. All right. Well, you said when you started when you were 11, and then you threw out this word college. So, how young are you now? Like, how many years, like, are in the
Damn.
space? Oh, my
Um,
bad.
how many? I guess you asked me how many years. Yeah, you're back. Um, yeah. I'm 20, gonna be 21 on Sunday. Um,
Oh,
4th of July,
nice.
baby.
Early birthday.
So yeah, I was been like about 10 years that I've been like writing quite consistently. Um, and just really just it's so fun, it's so freeing, and like when you're like a kid, you don't get that much independence because like you're a kid. But I was able to like explore places on my own where my parents were pretty free reign with like where I bike. So I, you know, would just be like, okay, like I just want to like bike to like Brooklyn today, and I would just figure that out on my own.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Totally, totally. All right. It's awesome. So I guess I'll tell you a little about me and the National Bike Council. We're a fairly new group. We've been around for like 3 years, and it wasn't until just like about like a year and a half ago, right as the pandemic was starting, that we really started to ramp up like our community initiatives. It's pretty much a council. We're a council, but we want to create a community around youth cyclists to be able to help each other. And we're youth leaders in the community, like yourself, and especially in the ways. So that's about us. I got involved via a bike program called Neighborhood Bike Works, and that was
Oh,
in
in Philly,
Philadelphia. Yep, in Philly.
you froze again.
There we
You're
go.
back.
Yep, I'm having a little bit of connectivity issues, but we should be better now. And that's in Philly, yeah.
That's really cool. My grandmother's actually from Philly. Um, but yeah, it's really cool. I think that, it's really important to engage a lot of youth in cycling. I just think that like it's hard because like I specifically work with like disabled youth and, as a disabled person myself, like, there's different barriers there, especially when it comes to biking, like cycling world, and how people think about cyclists and how cyclists think about themselves. I feel like when you go to a bike shop, right, it's like, like I'm someone who loves like biking in traffic and like, getting a little adrenaline rush, but that's not everybody. That's definitely not everybody. Um, so yeah, and I think just having more youth involved is so important. I was a speaker at 2019 Youth Bike Summit. Everyone listening, you should go to the Youth Bike Summit. Great event. But yeah, that was just like, really eye-opening to see so many youth involved, and it was like kind of like for me it was like a lot because like I was like the only kid at like Recyclable Bicycle. Like I was like 17. Everyone there was like twice my age, but I think having an open and inclusive spaces for like kids and like disabled people and everyone really is so important.
Yeah, I think it actually makes it easier for us to like transition into like the industry. It's not like rocket science. Honestly, they have like earn a bike classes for like very, very, very young children, and if someone wanted to take that to the next level, it's super simple to do so. So, like opening up the space to young people to like advancing their careers via cycling, I think is something that we should definitely be considering more.
Yeah, and also just I feel like, you know, really, more awareness around like alternative methods of cycling, like, like e-bikes, and I ride an e-bike now because I have chronic pain.
Gotcha.
I love e-bikes. I think that I feel like there's a lot of like, there's a lot of like old guard in the cycling world, a lot of like old, the older. Have you been to the National Youth Bike Summit? I mean, the National Bike
Yes,
Summit.
yes.
Like those, you know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Um, like like the LCI coaches, not me, not all of them, but like a lot of people have this very like, maybe I shouldn't say anything bad about them. They're great.
They're gonna
But
come
yeah,
after you.
yeah. I'm not, but yeah, like I feel like just there's a lot of like old types of messaging about about who rides a bike, and it's really, I think that there's really a big need for a lot of young people, people of color, disabled people of color, queer people to just really, you know start riding, and to like, for us to really talk about our needs in terms of cycling, because I feel like it's so dominated by like the by like older white male people. I
Mhm.
just read this book, Cycle Race by Adonia Lugo. I don't know if you've read that book. It's
I
great.
have not.
Oh, I can like literally mail you a copy if you want. 'Cause I finish. I don't like to like hoard things. I just, whenever I finish a book, I send it along.
Let's do
Um,
it.
yeah.
What's it
Um,
about?
it's about, it's like kind of like an ethnography, and it's about like bicycling and race, and like how, like, talks a lot about the concept of like green gentrification, and like just sort of like how do we make like spaces that are safe for cycling and center the needs of like, with working cyclists, cyclists of color. And it was just a really like eye-opening book because I feel like a lot of the same concerns as the disabled person I had are, similar to the concerns that she was voicing in that thing. Because I feel like, it's just, there's like a really big need for like, younger people who get each other, who are, you know, to just sort of like ride bikes. And like she also talked about how amazing the Youth Bike Summit was as an alternative to the National Bike Summit, which is like, yeah, yeah,
I get
and
it.
yeah, I was there, and I remember, so it was really sad. I remember like I really went, so I went to a conference on like, I went to like a session, like a breakout session on like engaging like youth in riding, and I thought this was like really, it was a really cool session. And there was a guy in the back, um, who was like a person of color. We were having this conversation about like disabled people and women, and like a really quiet conversation. We were exchanging information, and I got like screamed at like in the middle of the conference, like by this older white man, and it was like scary. And my boss was in the room. Um, it was like really scary. Like
Wow.
I was like, yeah. So that happened. But I feel like, that's why I feel like there's such a need for like, you know, just like the Youth Bike Summit to have like, these open, inclusive places that are very youth centered and people aren't getting yelled at for whispering in the back of a room because everyone does that. Um,
Yeah, everybody actually does that.
Everyone does that, but like, I was just whispering and it was just like the reaction was like so like intense and I was like, I don't want to be in a space where people are like that.
Yeah, and so like it's even more interesting and a little bit ironic too, based on the title of the subject, like the subject of the presentation. But you sort of went, and I wonder if this was before or after you spoke at the Youth Bike Summit, because if
It
it
was
was,
after.
I see. All right, well, in that case, like even so, you did have the opportunity to not only speak up but speak out. And so maybe tell us a little bit about how you got to be a speaker at the Youth Bike Summit, because that's wild.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that was a wild, wild story. Um, okay. Um, well, it was a wild story because I was actually just going to submit a presentation proposal on speaking about disability at the Youth Bike Summit. I'm very passionate about, we need their cycling culture like desperately needs to stop being so ableist. And I'm like a big, advocate for that. And so I submitted like a proposal of like what I want to speak about, the program I was running, and like our successes, our challenges, and to really just like, give some sort of advice about that. It was a really crazy time personally because I just started showing symptoms for like what became like a very serious illness. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so it was just a very like interesting time for me in general. But yeah, I basically showed this proposal to like Theo side if you know him. Um,
Don't
Theo,
think so.
he has a man bun, which I describes like half of people in cycling, I realize.
All right. Yeah, I don't think I know him. He was
So
part of People for Bikes.
he like calls like Karen over and he's like, "This is really good," and I'm like, "Oh, thanks." And he's like, "Would you like to be the keynote speaker at the Youth Bike Summit?" Like, do they just like talk and then they just come up to me like that? I'm like, like, yes, I would. And I were just it
Oh.
was just so crazy. And she's like, "Okay, we have to like make sure like everyone like on the board of like the National Youth Bike Council and like Bike New York people are cool with it. I think everyone should be cool with it, but like we just gotta be sure." So I remember like calling my best friend, being like, "Oh my god, this just happened." It was just so crazy to me and so surreal. But yeah, I think that it's just an amazing time and just to be in it, just to be in a space where like people are so open. And I think they're honestly like one of the things I'm really sad about is that like I feel like it should. I like that it's like an alternative space, but I also feel like I wish there were more like mainstream like people
Mm-hmm.
who are there just as observers, not as speakers. Because I really don't think it should be a space where like giant CEO speaks, but just to like have. I feel like it really should center youth, but to have more people like observing it and listening and learning, and I feel like it's just like because there's so much good stuff coming out of that.
Yeah, that's why when we sort of thought about doing this idea for like just doing summer chats, our goal was to speak with youth leaders, but we didn't exclude like everyday cyclists, because an everyday cyclist is an everyday cyclist and like their view matters as well. So all our target really was just people that are young that are already doing it. And then we've also been creating like a Discord community around these folks that are just young and want to be like a part of the bigger conversation in some way or just be involved. Um, so it's been interesting to see how that has been like working. Hey, Dina, I see you joined. Um, and I think it's really important to, like you said, make it as inclusive as possible.
Yeah, for sure. I think that like one of the things I think that is so important is like inclusivity and also like you know I feel like really working like for me like one of the like things I had at the like things I started to realize like at the in bikes is that like a lot of times like and there's this whole conversation about accessibility in terms of like urbanism and in terms of how we design cities, but that it hasn't really like made its way into like the cycling community, and I wish it would more. And I feel like there's but I feel like just definitely like needing more inclusive spaces, and also like I just think like some of this great. Y'all should go. Who's ever listening, like buy your tickets now. Um,
What is it open like tomorrow?
oh, it opens tomorrow. I will have to see if I can go to Atlanta. I don't know.
Yeah, that was something that our group is looking at to like going together. So we're currently looking into it. It'd be so awesome.
Yeah, I'll I'll see. I don't know how much I don't know how much money it is to get from Boston to Atlanta. Like,
You're in Boston?
but I'm in Boston right now. I go to school in Boston.
Oh, all
Um,
right. Wow, crazy. Small world.
yeah, yeah, I am. Yeah, currently, and I live in a very hilly area, so I have an e-bike now. I love e-bikes. E-bikes are great. Yeah, it's just, what bike do you ride?
Um, I ride a road bike right now. Um, Barely do any mountain biking. Not, I would like to, but
You
right now
have
it's
road
just a,
bike.
yeah, right now it's just a road bike and like a hybrid, and yeah.
You have very much road bike energy, I would say. As like the former, like you just have like the like I can see you in a kit, like
Oh, you should.
like
We actually didn't get a bottom, but we have a top. So we have like this National Youth Bike Council, like just the top, the jersey. It works pretty well with like a black. I have like this horrible need for speed. So I act like I'm going fast, even though I'm really not. And that's my thing.
I'm like so slow. Like like so this is something y'all should know as a cyclist. If y'all are listening, foam roll. Buy a foam roller, buy a yoga mat, do that. So if you don't do that, have like I was biking like all summer long and then like have knee pain now. So like foam roll, seriously, like do that every day before and after you ride. Release that tension. It's great. It'll help you. Your knees will feel a lot better. But I have an e-bike, and people like pass me, and I'm like, okay, like you passed someone with chronic knee pain. Like congratulations. Like you want a medal?
Yeah, absolutely. They want a medal. What are you talking about?
Like one time I was on like the Hudson River Greenway, going to recycle a bicycle, and I just had like wisdom tooth surgery, and I was on like a city bike, so, like big clunky. And these like young kids were like, "Oh yeah, we passed." I'm like, "Congratulations, you passed me like 3 days after like wisdom tooth surgery on a bike that like barely hits 10 miles an hour. Like you want a medal?" Um,
That is
but
funny.
yeah,
I
yeah. Like I mean, I admire the bike share programs. That being said, I hate riding them.
Yeah, I actually like even to your point just a second ago. I think to your point about like making sure just like the small shout out on like doing your exercises slash stretches before you ride. Definitely highly recommend. I went in to get my bike fit recently because I'm like, this is not really working, but it really ends up being like more of a stretching thing. Like make sure you
Yeah,
stretch.
yeah. For me, it like sort of became like a year long saga. Um, in terms of like getting to the point where like I was mostly like pain free while walking, and I really think that like seriously, if you want to do like a Zoom class on like how to foam roll, like I'd be down to teach that because and how to do basic stretches because so many people don't, and you really don't want to be like 19 and your mom comes up to visit you in college and you're limping, and
Ah,
yeah, you don't want to be that. Like
yeah, definitely not.
so, like yeah, I feel like definitely like making sure you got the right bike fit is so important, but also like foam roll, stretch, run around, do some exercises. Also sometimes as cyclists, like we strengthen parts of our muscles, but we're not strengthening other ones. So like, you know, do that. Yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about advocacy because I assume you have like an article written about you, like one or two, like how many at this point? Like, time to
I
fill.
don't know. You can find it on my LinkedIn because I'm 90 now. I have a LinkedIn because I'm 90.
All right, I was like because I'm 90.
Oh, hi, Gina. Yeah. So yeah, definitely do that. Yeah, advocacy. Sure, ask me questions.
Great, great. Well, first, probably gonna have to get you to do a stretch class. Looks like they want it. So
Yeah, I will definitely reach out to me. I will definitely do that.
let's see. So, what do you feel that within the next year, like we need to see in the cycling community?
Oh my gosh, so many things. I think, first of all, um, biggest thing I think that needs to happen in the cycling community is, um, I think that we need to I think that older people, I think that we all need to make space for each other. And that being said, like, I think like I don't actually understand the needs of cyclists of color, and I think there needs to be like a lot of white people sort of allowing cyclists of color to speak about their experiences with like policing and those sorts of things, because I feel like so many one of the things that was addressed in that book was that the book I was referencing is called Cycle Race, I think, or Bike Race by Antonio Lugo. You can find it online. Um, but definitely like those experiences, because I don't have those experiences. I'm a white person and I don't necessarily have that. But I think that, people like me need to step aside and let people like you sort of talk about those experiences. At the same time, like able people need to like allow disabled people to talk about what's on bike with disability. And I think just like really, listening to the most marginalized members in our community, working cyclists, disabled cyclists, cyclists of color, and really like, we need to just really be more of an inclusive community, because right now, like there is a bike shop I actively avoid in my neighborhood because they are just so sexist.
Oh wow,
And
that's horrible to hear.
yeah, like I always like I try to like put the air. I use their air pump before I was able to get my air pump up
Yeah,
because of like Rona. Not a fan of the Rona. Um, get vaccinated for all those of you who are watching who can seriously get vaccinated. I'm a public health teacher by PSA the hour.
get them.
Um, but yeah, but like I feel like just definitely making space for people is so important, and like you know allowing these conversations to happen, and like willing to be uncomfortable, willing to really get our hands like involved in these conversations. Because I feel like right now, like we're seeing a lot of um like we're seeing a lot of companies and organizations sort of not address these issues as well as they should, or like address them in a very like frivolous way. So biggest change, I think, need to make need to have these conversations about these tough issues, and also like doing things, not just having a conversation, but like actually, what are your policies to like fix this issue? And I think that it's so important to me as a disabled cyclist, because I feel like the communities are not as inclusive as they should be. And another thing, like to the disability piece of myself, like we need to like plan for accessibility at our event. Like seriously, don't have an event in a 3-story walk up. Plan for accessibility, and like if your event is not being accessible, put a disclaimer there. Like, hey, like I tried really hard, but I get it. We're not like a community that has a lot of money. We're not like we're not like the I don't know. We're not like big Silicon Valley. If you if the only place you can have like talk about that and reach out to people about accessibility needs in like your sign up forms, you know and be accommodating for that, because we really just need to make these events accessible, but also everything else I said. I'm sorry, that was very long.
No, but like you were, I like sort of where you're going, because I have a follow up question. Like, so talking about accessibility and like inclusion as something that we need to see, like especially within the next year. Not really sure what that looks like, but we know that's what we want by having these conversations. So, what do you think national groups, obviously the National Bike Council national group, but other national groups can do to support communities like that?
Yeah, I think for starters, like having events or closed captioning on your Zoom events, because right now everything's on Zoom, is like a step you can make to just make things more accessible. Um, in your sign up forms, have like what are your needs in terms of accommodations. And really, we obviously can't be perfect all the time. Everyone's gonna make mistakes. Like, you know, everyone's gonna make mistakes in terms of like ableism, racism, sexism. Like, we're all gonna make our mistakes, but like owning up to it, apologizing, all that is important. But um, I feel like just really national organizations sort of like making stands and like not tokenizing, because I feel like in certain spaces, like it was like here's our one disabled person, but we need
Mm-hmm.
to like sort of but not need to sort of like have more of that. I really presented on this panel last 2 weeks ago. I can't remember time with Project Republic Spaces, and that was really good because I wasn't like the only disabled person in the room, and I was like nervous that I would be that, but I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And just sort of like really, really having these difficult but necessary conversations, I think, are just so important, and to facilitate them as national orgs. And so, like, yeah, I'm just very passionate about this, as you can tell. Um, yeah. Oh, thank
No,
you,
I
Jeremy,
mean
for your
that's
clapping.
exactly why we're
That's what I
yay,
love
yay,
about it.
yay.
That's what I love about National Youth Bike Summit and National Youth Bike Councils. I feel like it's like one of the only cycling organizations is actually like starting to do this sort of these having these conversations. And I feel like a lot of people just, they'll release these like statements like we stand with Black Lives Matter, but won't do anything to address like racism in their organization. And, what does that give you? Nothing. Um,
Right, and I was actually going to ask you that too. Like organizations, people, persons, even advocates will look at this and be like, "Yeah, let's go summit." We'll see you, and we'll be like, "All right, so we know what you want." They also, I guess, would want to know like, what do you like? What kind of community activities do you do right now in any form or way? Maybe if there are resources out there that we can lend, anybody can lend to you to help you. So, like, what things do you do in the community right now?
right now, I'm sort of like just focusing on getting my degree.
All right, word.
But
Yep.
yeah, starting in the fall, I'm going to actually be a research fellow at the Luria Institute for Disability Policy, which I'm really excited about. So, sort of studying disability issues. But and also, I was sort of up until COVID, I was working on a curriculum on how to train teachers to work with disabled students of all disabilities. And so, who wants to pay me to finish that? Anyone in the audience who has, money. I'm kidding. Uh,
She said,
I'm
national
kidding.
organizations, I need money.
Yeah, I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding. I'm completely kidding. I'm not, asking people for money, but yeah, I think that like, I was working on that. That was something I've like considered like, revisiting and talking about. I think that there needs to be in terms of like bike education, which is where I was working, like there's definitely a lot of like emphasis on like working with people with disabilities, and also like expanding beyond the bicycle, so expanding to things like tricycles
All right.
and wheelchair cycles and e-bicycles. And I know like people get really nervous when you talk about e-bikes, but I think that e-bikes are honestly like there are so many people who like either because of disability or because they're elderly or because biking can be very intense. So either for every one of those reasons, um, maybe, some people just don't exercise and don't want to get into it. Like e-bikes can be so helpful. And I remember for myself, like, when I was considering getting it, came across this article by someone with a similar chronic condition that I had. And her like handle was like, I found her Twitter and I read her article and was like, I should get an e-bike. Like I should get it. Like, this one was like, getting an e-bike, and I did, and I'm so grateful I did it. It's been so fun. It's so fun. You should ride an e-bike. Everyone should ride an e-bike. If you haven't ridden one yet, go get one. You just go zoom, like that's the way I describe it. It's um like I'm of course, and but also like in terms of a policy and advocacy side, like talking about how costly they are. Like I literally like saved up a lot of money for mine, and it was I had a big privilege in being able to afford that, and I bought mine like I got like a $900 discount on it because the original price was like insane.
What was the
Um,
original price?
2,300.
All right. It's funny that you say like it was hard to afford because a lot of people have issues affording stuff like that because they're normally trying to afford other things, like maybe like alternate transportations. The one that comes to mind all the time is like a car. Like if you're spending like 10, 20 times the amount on a car, like 9 times out of 10, like you're probably not gonna be able to afford an e-bike.
That's how I justified to my parents. I was like, my parents were like, "Why are you spending this?" It was my parents didn't pay for it. I paid for it. And they're like, and I'm like, "Well, it's kind of like a car, and the car would be like $10,000, and this is like 1,500. So like, it's not a car, but it does like similar things."
It gets you to like point A to point B. It works. It's electric.
Like, it has a motor, it has a battery. End of
That's
list.
so funny. That is
But
so
yeah,
funny.
that was like I think just like one of the biggest things I think is like how do we like subsidize costs because like in terms of like policy stuff because
Hmm.
like now like I'm studying a lot of health policy stuff just in terms of like healthcare systems at my
Yeah.
university. So hit me up for any insurance questions. I'm like half
Wow.
kidding.
You're gonna have just about everybody hitting you up. That's gonna be funny.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the advocacy skills I learned from like working in bikes like have definitely translated to like calling my insurance company and negotiating. Um,
So,
so
like,
like
the cycling lane has helped your life in that way. Has it helped you in any other ways?
definitely like just I feel like the dedication and like whenever I'm like um
Someone in
I
the
feel
chat
like
said, "Why have a car and pay for gas when you have bikes?" Exactly.
that's true. I mean, for me, I mean, it's hard because I live in an area now that's like very like not like New York City. And I think like this all comes back to like sometimes when you live in areas, it's like I wish like there's a difference in this. I'm not gonna piss this book. I'm gonna keep quoting it, but like there's a difference between the captive and the car free, and how like some people can make the voluntarily choice to be car free, but some people obviously can't make that choice. But like
Yeah.
in my area, it's like really hard because like in the winter, people here don't believe in plowing their sidewalk. I don't know about Philly. When I went to Philly, it snowed 1 inch and like everything shut down, and I was like, "What is going on?"
That's
Because
interesting.
I grew up in New York City, and I was like, "Okay, like 1 inch of snow is nothing." But when I was in when people don't plow, so like the ice is definitely like a hazard, and like I hate ice. Only ice cream is good. Um,
All right, I'm using that. I'm using that.
you can use ice cream is great.
I hate
But
ice.
are you gonna
Ice
have
cream is
ice cream
good.
are you gonna have ice cream at the youth bike summit? Ice cream there?
I don't think so.
You should.
Well, let's convince them to get it.
Yeah.
There we go. All
Uh,
right, goals.
but yeah, I think that in terms of like access and like stuff, like road conditions are so important. But I feel like so many times like I want to ride my bike in the winter, but I just can't because like it's too icy out and I'll fall and like break a bone, and don't want to do that.
Yep,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you've ever had any nasty accidents, but
I haven't. Well, I mean, I fell on my bike like
yeah.
more than once, so that happened.
My favorite story about bike injuries is that um someone was once like I was like I was at this like I was at this doctor's office and they were like, "How did you accrue all these injuries on your legs?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I worked at Recycle Bicycle. It just happens. Like it
It
just
just
happens.
happens.
It just happens. Like it's like
Oh
how
my
did I
god.
like I was at the end of the day I go home with like grease on my leg. Like how did you get all this grease? I'm like, I don't know. It just happened. Like I don't know how this happened.
Yeah, I think I
Um
always wore like long pants while I was like in the bike shop, but that was just my preference. I mean, they got holes in them now, but like,
I remember once eating a samosa in the bike shop and then looking and then like moving my hands a bit and realizing the samosa was black from like the grease. And I was like, what have I eaten? I swear I got 9 lives. I got 9 lives.
no, no, no. You're just trying to like grease inside. You know what I'm saying? Like, can't lubricate the bike too much.
Yeah, I was talking to a guy, I was like in an Uber today because I can't really bike to certain places in Massachusetts, unfortunately. And
I heard.
yeah, you really can't. But I don't know. I feel like just the way we've designed roads, like kind of like I wish I could bike everywhere. Like I wish. I think that I also think like one of the things that's really annoying is like how like the direct routes are always by car and like you have to go in some like yeah, bike race is like sand. I went to the beach on like Sunday and like I was like eating sand, like eating sand, and I was like, it gets everywhere,
Like, we'll have it eat
everywhere.
it.
I love, um, I love, I love the beach, but bike race does get everywhere. Whoever said that is like that is a very good analogy.
I'm gonna drop
You
in
were very,
quotes in the chat. But I guess that was something that we did want to know, and that's why we're like looking and targeting what are the ways like a national council of young people that are just invested in cycling in some form or way, whether they do it once a week or whenever they're with friends. Like this is something that they just like what can they do? Like I guess with our advocacy time together. So one thing we've been trying to do is like get other small councils either together or at least in a network, so we're able to do things on a larger scale. For instance, one thing we decided to do this year was something called Spring Back on Bikes, which you could probably find in our uh, yeah, find it on our Instagram somewhere. But I'm located in Philadelphia, but we worked with a team and of like young people that are more transportation oriented, but they do ride bikes and skate, skateboard. And we worked with them to go to different bike shops and like put on something called Spring Back on Bikes, which was like trying to get young people tickets like tune-up tickets and stuff like that to be able to fix up the bikes they currently have versus trying to go out and buy new ones during the shortage. So couldn't have did that alone. Like being all the way in Philadelphia, so it was much more useful to have like a connection of young people in different locations.
that is really cool. I think that, it's like I feel like one of my biggest complaints with like America,
Oh,
this is
America.
like of America in general, like we throw away things a lot. And that comes to bikes. I swear, I'm like now I'm just gonna turn to like a total Karen Overton, not like actual Karen.
Oh my
But
God.
yeah, she's lovely. I don't know if I assume you've met her once or twice.
Yeah.
Um, um, she's a total meme. But she would always like we throw away a lot of I once like my cousin he had like a bike that needed like a new chain and like new cogs and like and also new tires. And it's like, well, why don't I just buy a new bike? And I'm like, this is a good aluminum like road bike. Like, why would you get a new bike? Like you're gonna pay more. It's like you'll pay like 100. I would say like until it's probably about $300 for all those repairs. But like I think that like people don't see the value in investing in things, and I feel like people think like people think, oh yeah, my chain is rusty, so I'll just like throw it out and get a new bike.
But do you think that they knew how to like fix it?
I think people don't know how to fix it. Cause my cousin invited me over to like tell him what he needed done, and I was like, what you done?
Yeah, yeah.
And like, cause like I'm the like handy person in my family. Like when I was like fixing bikes, my dad's like, hey, can you fix the dishwasher for me? And I'm like, I don't know how dishwashers work. But yeah, I feel like definitely like I feel like it's good to like people to realize like you don't have to like get a new bike every year. You don't have to get a new this every year or new that. I'm very big in like like giving away books and like being like you don't always need to get new things all the time.
That's actually
I
the
just
good thing too. Is like it's definitely not like a phone. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Especially with like between like 2000 and 2010 kind of thing going on there.
Yeah, I feel like people like they like to like the new next iPhone comes out like what up to now the iPhone 20, 30, I don't know. I don't keep up with that. Um but like I feel like we have all this we have this like we have to buy new things constantly, and that's like bad for our earth and also just like bad for our wallets. And so it's just like get your bike tuned up and also like learn how to tune up your own bike. Like and sometimes like
Mhm.
me it's like really hard with an e-bike because I really physically cannot lift a 50-pound bike. So I just have to like
Oh
pay
yeah.
money to someone for labor costs, which like hurts me because I know how to do all these things. I just don't have a stand and don't have someone to lift said bike onto said stand. But it's like I think that having tune-ups and the awareness that it's free or like at a discount like is really important, and also just like learning how to do it yourself because these skills are so important. Also like get yourself a good pump, invest,
No, yeah.
and get
Actually, that's why I agree so much with like earn a bike programs where young people
yeah.
can learn how to fix their own bike at an early age. Not only does it give them a skill, but it also gives them some of the programs give them bikes at the end of the program. So super nice, and that's how I got into mine. And I really had like minimal issues after that because not only was I interested in riding at that point, but like if I had any issues, I was my own mechanic.
Yeah, I think that's super important. Because like for me, like now it's like, if I'm on the road, like I get a flat, like I know what to do with it. And one time it was really funny. Some woman struggling with her tire levers, and I'm like, hey, I can do that for you. And this other guy's like, I can do it, and I'm like, I probably can do it faster than you. I bet you I can do it faster than you. And then he was like, whoa, that was fast. He's like, you only needed one. I'm like, yeah, I've been doing this for a very long time. Also, like, let the air out of your tire before you take it off. So many people get this wrong, like a pet peeve of mine. Like, for anyone who's listening who
That's
didn't know this, let the air out of your tire before you take it off. Just like press on the valve. It's really easy.
that's a funny one. So yeah, I didn't want to take up too much of your time, but
Yeah,
I
I do
guess
gotta run, but this has been really
yeah,
lovely. We should connect again, like off. Send me an email.
yeah.
Um,
Did you have any questions for me or anything else that you wanted to like maybe shout out or just talk about? Maybe something I didn't include by
I
accident.
think this was pretty comprehensive, and I really just want to encourage young people listening. Ride. Feel free to DM me if you have any questions about what I do or what I've done or anything like that. I'm not a scary person, I promise. Um, but yeah, this has been really lovely, and I look forward to seeing how you do at the Youth Bike Summit in this year, hopefully. And keep riding, y'all.
Perfect.
And
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, thanks so much, Joelle, and thanks so much,
Thank you for
everybody, for
having
your
me.
time.